fellow guitar slingers, and welcome to lesson number 1. You know, the most effective way to break free from your old habits of just climbing up and down the scales in one position, one direction like this, is to teach your fingers new combinations of movements, new patterns of movements. And the superior method that we are going to use for that in this course is called sequences, which means playing small patterns of notes, small series of notes, moving up and down the scale. And now I'm going to show you an example of this. And in this course, I have strategically picked out a number of sequences that together make up the most efficient way to master this. And there is of course an infinite number of sequences for different purposes, but more about that in my other courses. And we are going to start here by checking out a sequence of 5 notes. So we play 5 notes, starting on the first note of the scale down here on fret 5 on the low E string. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then we move back to the second note of the scale here on fret 8, and we play 5 notes up the scale starting on that note. Then we go back down to the third note and play 5 notes from that. And the same thing from note number 4. And so on and so forth. And the very first thing to do when getting started with any exercise is of course to, at your own pace, taking your time, just figuring out the fingering and any difficult passages maybe or other challenges, so that your fingers knows exactly what it is we want them to do. And then when we got a good grip on this exercise, we start using a metronome. And these days you can find a metronome in any smartphone or tablet or in your computer if you don't want to buy another piece of gear. So we then start playing without interruption, just continuing up the scale pattern all the way to the top. So I play. And then we do the same thing starting on the highest note, coming down the scale. So we start up here on the 8th fret on the high E string with our little finger, and we play 5 notes down the scale. And then we come back up to the second note of the scale up here on the 5th fret, and we play 5 notes from there downwards. And then note number 3, playing 5 notes descending from that note. Note number 4, same thing. And we continue like that all the way down the scale. And then again we take our metronome and play in time a sequence of 5 notes descending. Okay, so now we're going to play a sequence that I call every other note. We start from the top note of the scale this time, fret 8 on the high E string with our little finger. And immediately we jump from there down to the next string on the same fret. So now we have skipped 1 note. Then we come back up to the second note of the scale. So we skip the next note and jump down to note number 4, fret 5 on the B string. And repeat that pattern, playing every other note of the scale. We then repeat this pattern ascending, coming up the scale, starting on the lowest note at fret 5 on the low E string, and then jump up to fret 5 on the A string, skipping 1 note. And then we come back down to the second note on the 8th fret on the low E string and jump from there up to the 4th note, and we keep going like that up the scale. Now we're going to play what is called a hammer-on pull-off sequence. So once again, we start on the lowest note of the scale position, fret 5 on the low E string, and we pick that note with our picking hand. And then we hammer with the tip of our little finger onto the string on fret 8 without picking it with our picking hand, coming straight from above down onto the string, avoiding the finger going flat or collapsing, just coming from above with our fingertip. And then we come back up to the next note of the scale, 5th fret on the A string, picking that note with our picking hand. So this is going to be groups of 3 notes. And we will move up the scale 1 string at a time instead of like in the sequences before where we moved up 1 note at a time. So we're repeating this pattern all the way up the scale. And when we have this pattern sorted out, we again start playing without interruption. And our goal is that all the notes should be equally long and equally strong. And now it's time to play downwards from the high E string using a pull-off exercise. So we start with our little finger on the 8th fret on the high E string, and we make a pull-off down to the 5th fret where the first finger is waiting to catch the note. So with our little finger pressed down on the 8th fret, we now let the string go by pulling it downwards and snapping it off. And then we come down and play the next note of the scale, picking it with our picking hand on the 8th fret. So again, a group of 3 notes that we keep moving down 1 string at a time. And when we're ready to get a bit fancy, we can combine the 2 patterns, the ascending hammer-on pattern with a descending pull-off pattern, like this. So, we reached the end of this lesson. Great job! And I hope that you felt a bit inspired and maybe a bit challenged. So, download the backing track and play using that. It's very important to find a balance between practicing, memorizing scales, playing to a metronome and things like that, like exercise stuff, and to play together with music and just explore and having fun. So a nice balance between practicing and playing is very important and effective. Pick up the guitar as often as you can. Playing long sessions is not as effective as playing often and frequently, but I will get back to those tips and tricks about learning and being effective later on in my other courses. So in the next lesson we will add a couple of notes to get some more color into our solos and some more flow. So until then, have fun and keep those strings ringing, okay?